Welcome to Retail's Most Wanted, the podcast that examines the latest issues related to organized retail crime and how retailers and policymakers are fighting back against today's organized crime syndicates. I'm your host, Marty Carpenter, and today on the show, we're joined by Craig Reynolds and Jay Ruzycki of the Vancouver Police Department to discuss the international work being done to combat ORC and some of the challenges they face in dealing with an international border so close to their city. Great conversation. That's coming up right after this word from our sponsor. Retail's Most Wanted is brought to you in partnership with LVT, securing physical environments through intelligent automation. Learn more at lvt.com. That's lvt.com. Well, I guess we'll start by saying welcome to the United States. Welcome south of the border. We're happy to have you. Welcome to Salt Lake City. Hopefully, the weather here has probably been a little bit similar to what you're accustomed to in BC, and glad to have you here. So let's talk here because we've never actually had, I don't think, anyone from outside of the United States on the show before, and we've talked to people from all across the United States. So we may have just some fundamental things that we need to straighten out when we say difference between American laws and Canadian laws. But I wonder, let's start here. How bad of a problem is organized retail crime in Canada, or more specifically in British Columbia? What kind of challenges are you facing?
I'd say we kind of follow the trends of the U.S. 2021, we started to see a rise in edged weapons and used in retail crime. It was about a 260% increase. And it's very similar. You know, I worked with police agencies all across Canada, and everyone's saying the same thing. It's this increase. We've moved from shoplifting, where people are going in stealing for food, and now people are coming in with laundry lists from fences to go and get, this type of clothing or these types of tools. And we talk with police agencies in the U.S., and all of us are seeing the same problem. It's just in Canada we have different laws, and how we deal with it is often different than the way authorities in the U.S. are now dealing with it.
Tell us a little bit about those differences, because we've seen, for example, California had what was, I think, across the board accepted as like insane policy to allow people to steal up to a certain dollar amount, a fairly high dollar amount, almost $1,000. And then that got so bad that they changed the law back, and now they're maybe having a little more success in combating it. I wonder what kind of differences you have.
Yeah, for us in Canada, we don't have the felonies. We have different. So for theft, our limit is we have two: theft under $5,000 and theft over $5,000. That's our limit right there. So that's what we work with. The other challenge is in Canada, our criminal code is controlled by the federal government. So in the U.S., speaking to members in California, Oregon, Michigan, they all say, in our state, we develop these laws. For us to develop laws, we have to do it nationally and across Canada.
A much bigger lift.
Which is a lot harder, because we have to get all the provinces on board. So it's a lot more challenging in terms of laws. And the dollar amounts is, $5,000 is a lot of product that you can take in one go.
How much of that has changed? Like, obviously, it's a totally different governing system, a parliamentary system. And if you have a change in prime minister, how quickly does that change, or does it have to still go through sort of a legislative process like it does here in the United States?
It truly does have to go through a legislative process, and really there has to be a political appetite across the country almost to make a change like that. It certainly doesn't happen quickly, and you find that it doesn't happen within the term of one single government even. So yeah, it is something difficult to change for sure. Yeah.
Do you see that the problems are concentrated in the larger cities like in British Columbia and Vancouver, as opposed to more of the suburban areas, or even out into the more rural areas beyond the suburban areas?
I would say it's everywhere. Large cities, smaller cities, they're all going to deal with retail crime. It's just the size of it. I know in Vancouver we deal with a lot, but we have surrounding cities that are also quite large in population. They're seeing the same people that come from Vancouver. They take this train and they go into Richmond, or they go into Surrey or Burnaby. They go into the neighboring cities and commit crime there as well. So it's transient. We have, Vancouver Island, Victoria. They're seeing the same type of challenges all over BC, all over Canada. It's just, when you have a larger city, you're going to have more of a population and more chance with the size of stores and in that area to do that crime.
Vancouver, relatively close to the U.S. border. I wonder how an international border complicates these things where you have, I presume we're not talking about, this is an organized crime ring that only works in Canada and they won't cross the border to the south. I imagine to some extent they're based in the U.S. and come up to cause problems above and probably vice versa. You have groups on both sides of that line. How does that line complicate what you're trying to do in battling against ORC?
For sure. I know from my standpoint, from an anti-fencing standpoint, in dealing with the fences, what we're finding relatively recently actually is fences that are buying stolen property from people that have stolen it in Vancouver or other areas in our lower mainland. And they're actually shipping it offshore. And the stuff isn't being resold in our area. It's just going to other jurisdictions, other countries. And those international borders are what causing the issue for us in recovering that product and even securing charges against people when they leave the country.
I hadn't thought about that element. Vancouver, it's a seaport town, right? Stuff can get on a boat and get out of Dodge pretty quickly, where that's not something they deal with in Dallas, or even to a certain extent, a place like Detroit that's just across the Canadian border and has access to waterways. So that must complicate things as well then.
Absolutely, yeah. We do find stuff. As part of my job, I also deal with the stolen auto section, and we're actually finding stolen autos from right across Canada ending up in our port. Similar to retail items, they're being shipped in these shipping containers and they're gone sometimes before we even know about it.
Do you find then that you have to work a lot with U.S. law enforcement to help put investigations together where you're saying, hey, these guys are operating, in northern Washington state just like they are in southern British Columbia, and kind of dancing on both sides of that line?
I know in my auto crime group for sure. Yes, there's absolutely a crossover there. I haven't seen...
Is that often people stealing Canadian vehicles and bringing them to the U.S. or the other way around, or sort of an even mix?
Both ways.
Wow,
Both
okay.
ways, yeah. And also we're sharing information because we're finding the ways they're stealing the cars in the United States or the way they're stealing the cars in Canada are being used on both sides of the border. So if we can share information about how that's happening and how we're tackling it.
Yeah.
In terms of the organized retail crime, at this point, there are groups that are cross-border, and we're able to share information and talk with U.S. agencies. And I think even before we were seeing this huge increase in organized retail crime, police agencies were communicating on many different files. So we always have that connection with different law enforcement. We have different procedures that we can go through as well. But I think the big thing is developing relationships. And one of the reasons we're here is to come down, meet different law enforcement agencies, meet different retailers that might not be in Canada but might have a footprint somewhere else, and we can make those connections and start sharing intel or information on how things are happening and what they're seeing.
I imagine some of the challenges are very similar, whether you're in Canada or in the United States. One that we hear a lot is how retailers have work with their loss prevention teams and investigators. Is there anything that is notably different because you're dealing with Canadian laws or anything like that when it comes to just the ability to work? Or what do you generally find from companies in your jurisdiction who say, hey, this is what we're up against and this is how the relationship we want to have? Are they generally open to having a really positive relationship with law enforcement?
Yeah, I'll say that Vancouver, when we introduced our business liaison officer program back, that really opened up the door for that communication and building relationships with businesses. One of the biggest successes from our Project Barcode was the relationship building, that we can say, oh, we're having a problem in this store. Well, we can call the national loss prevention manager and start working on strategies together. It's not just, the police are going to come in and solve retail crime. That's never going to work. We need, we use the example of it's a stool. We need the retailers, we need police, and we need the courts. So everyone's working together. The retailers are great. I know I can pick up the phone and contact most of the major retailers in Canada, or at least get a contact for one and start communicating what we need. And then often they'll get on it and get what we need. I think the big thing for us is technology. Would be the difference between us and
for sure.
Tell me about how technology plays in.
Yeah, well, relatively recently in Vancouver, we've moved to an electronic disclosure system. So when we write a report to Crown Counsel or write a report for charges and put forward for prosecution, it all gets sent electronically over. It's interesting. We had a discussion at the town hall earlier about video, and that's actually a problem for us. All these different types of video systems that retailers have, who can view it, how do we view it, and then how do we change it into a format so our prosecutors can view it and not have issues with it, especially in court or pre-court. Huge problem for us. But I think we're finding, as we kind of mentioned, in Canada, I think we're finding that what happens in the States trickles its way towards us. So it often happens here first, and then the trend continues and it just moves north. So having a town hall like this actually really helps us because we can see how things have been dealt with here, what we need to do technology-wise also, so we can get ahead of it for ourselves. Yeah.
Craig, you mentioned Project Barcode. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about what that is.
So it's an operational-based project. So we run for 16 days. We do it throughout the year. We normally coordinate it with police agencies across Canada. We dedicate probably around 30 members, and they go out, and their job is they have direct communication with asset protection, loss prevention officers, and when the LPOs see something, they're communicating with us, and our members are coming in, and they're doing the arrest. So the big thing for that project is we are targeting violent shoplifters and chronic offenders. So as we said earlier, there was an increase in the violence and the weapons. So now we're coming in and we're doing the arrests. We're the one stopping the violence. It was the violence against the loss prevention managers. Well, most people don't want to come in and cause violence against the police, and we have the better tools to deal with it. So that's part of it. And then we collect all that information. We run. It is the biggest project in Canada, I will say, talking to other agencies for the length and the amount of members devoted. We take all that information that we get from the project, and then we forward it over to our anti-fencing unit, or even during the project, we're in constant communication with them, trying to get the fences, because that's really where we need to go after. One of the things we found in Vancouver, and we're not sure if it's the same around in other larger cities, but we have a large population that is dealing with being unhoused, mental health challenges, and substance abuse addiction. So a lot of the fencers are going to them in the specific area and giving them the laundry list of things to do, and then they're paying them pennies on a dollar.
Creating jobs.
Creating jobs, but they give them pennies on a dollar.
It's not always a good thing to create a job, it sounds like.
Sometimes they're paying them in drugs. Yeah.
So Barcode, it definitely comes in. We've talked to retailers that when we do the project, they see a sharp decrease in retail crime for a set period of time, and then we start it up again, and then we keep doing it.
I hear from a lot of people on the show the impact that online marketplaces have had in investigative strategies and the way they've had to go about addressing this issue. I wonder if you could just speak to that a little bit, that what kind of complications come with that?
Sure.
Is there any difference between the issues you face in Canada versus what a lot of our guests here in the U.S. would face?
Yeah. Well, some of the issues we have for sure with this, we have a communication issue sometimes with those actual platforms. We find sometimes we reach out for some assistance or some orders, and it takes a long time to get some information back. Some of the other problems we see, obviously, you see these items for sale in these marketplaces, but looking at them just online, it's great, but which ones are stolen? Where are they stolen from? And how do we get to them? For sure. But excellent information. It's obviously, we take the information that we can get from those marketplaces and work with that for sure. Yeah.
I want to just wrap up on this question, give you sort of a crystal ball, or make some predictions for me, right? Tell me where do you see that we are 3, 5, 10 years down the road when it comes to combating organized retail crime? Is the technology going to continue to evolve in a way that lets the good guys get ahead of the bad guys? Are we always chasing on this, or where do you think we'll be in 5 or 10 years?
I think the big one and one that we're trying to push and hopefully it'll catch on, and it's not shoplifting anymore. I think that's the big, push right now, and hopefully it'll continue. It's not the person going into the store who's stealing.
Is that a matter of public awareness, helping them understand
I think it's
that?
public awareness. I think it's just, everyone it's the messaging, when you talk to media, it's always shoplifting. Well, when you think shoplifting, you think of the kid who's stealing
takes a candy bar. Yeah.
It's not the guy who's coming into a store and stealing 17 jackets that they're going to go sell online and make a huge profit. I think so that, in the next couple of years, I'm hoping that message kind of gets pushed, that it's, it is a serious crime. It's tied into everything. It's tied into drugs. It's tied into organized crime. It's tied into auto theft.
It's tied into human trafficking.
Trafficking. So it's bringing it more out into the public, and, also helping the retailers and the store staff that, they shouldn't have to face violence on a daily basis. And then to do that is through technology, I think. Yeah.
Jay, where do you think we are in 5 years?
Yeah, you know what? I think the technology on our side is going to keep developing. I think, we're just going to get better and better at tackling this stuff, and hopefully we can get to it quicker. I echo what Craig says, this isn't shoplifting anymore. It's tied into everything. It affects us all. It makes life more expensive for everybody, really. It's not just about the retailer. It's about all of us. And the quicker we can get ahead of it, the better, for sure. And I think we will get there. I think we'll get to a point where we're half a step behind instead of 2-3 steps behind, for sure. Yeah.
That's it for this episode of Retail's Most Wanted. Thanks to our presenting sponsor, LVT. And don't forget to hit that subscribe or follow button so you can catch each new episode. We drop one every 2 weeks. We're also on X, we're on LinkedIn, and we're on YouTube. Links to all of those are in the show notes below. Thanks for being with us, everyone. And as always, keep up the good fight.